ACDC, Araceli and Colette, the Dynamic Change, and today is the last show before Christmas. So my name is Araceli, and I'm a transition wealth advisor. And we have a very special show today. Colette, can you introduce yourself and our guest?
Of course I can. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Colette Rabba. I am a real estate broker in the GTA, in the West End GTA. And we have a great guest today. Her name is Christine Brunston. Her company is called Trusted Legacy, and she does all the stuff that some people don't like to talk about, like wills and estates and things like that. So that's why we thought we would love to have her on the show today, because you know, Araceli, she says everything touches money. And when you have an estate, which could be real estate, actual land or house or properties, Christine deals with that and gets you ready, because we all know it's coming. We don't like talking about it. But that's why we thought Christine is a perfect person to have on the show, because we want to get you ready and have everything prepared and not to talk doom and gloom. But you know what? It's all about having a plan, right, ladies?
That's right. That's right. So, Christine, can you give us more details about your company and things like that?
Sure. I mean, thank you so much for having me. Really a pleasure to be here. And I've actually came about setting up this company as a result of spending decades working within the trust industry at various trust companies in Canada. And realizing that, you know, only 2% of people ever name a trust company, and the other 90% are out, 98% of them are out there kind of, you know, working their way through this process on their own. There isn't a lot of education around this. This is not something we're taught in school. I can tell you, in any job I've ever had, nobody ever came and taught it to me then. And there was no magic fairy that showed up at the hospital when I had the kids and basically taught me at that point either. So where do you learn this, and how do you come about getting the information that you need to set yourself up properly for the future? And that's why that was the genesis of setting up the company.
So what we're really talking about here, if we're not clear enough, is that, you know, when you not only have, it doesn't matter if you have property, but it's also if you have children, if you have anything, you know, savings, anything like that, you need to set up a trust or a will or have an executor before something happens, not just death, but also if you're incapacitated. Is that correct?
100%. And I would say that the latter is probably the more important one, because you're still here and you need somebody who's going to be able to manage your property the way that you would like them to manage it. So you've got to give instructions.
Yeah, especially during COVID, like we're all unsure of how it would affect us if we actually got sick, and then to think about these things before you actually get into that bad position. So thank you, Christine, for joining us. Let's get started. How do we figure this all out?
The theme today is basically what happens to property when there is no will. Can you tell us what people go through and how they can avoid it?
For sure. So first of all, we need to go back to law, and I'll start this off with my weasel and caveat wording, which says that I am not a lawyer. I am not a tax specialist. Anything I'm providing here today is not advice. It is just in general conversation. That takes care of that.
Perfect.
When it comes to real property and not having a will. So first of all, we would look to say, okay, is this property owned jointly with rights of survivorship with someone else? And if it is, it's going to pass to the survivor just by rights of survivorship. If it's not, so if it's held in tenants in common, or it's held solely by the individual, then it's going to be dealt with as part of the estate. Where there is no will in Ontario, all the assets will vest in the personal representative at date of death. And that's they remain subject to encumbrances, debt, et cetera, et cetera. So what the estate representative would do is take steps to register the property in the name of the proper beneficiaries according to the laws of intestacy, which were devised through it's called the SLRA, the Succession Law Reform Act. Gets into a lot of terminology here,
Yeah.
But suffice it to say that in Ontario, if you have not left a will, the government is going to choose your beneficiaries for you.
Mhm.
And you, whether you like them or not, that's the way things are going to go. So in Ontario right now, if you don't have a will, but you have a spouse and a spouse only, all of your assets will go to your spouse. If you have a spouse and a child, so the spouse will get the first $350,000, that's called a preferential share, and the remainder would be split half and half. If you have a spouse plus 2 or more children, your spouse is going to get that first 350,000, plus they're going to share in the remainder of the estate. So it's going to be split 1/3 to the spouse, and the other 2/3 would be split equally among the surviving children.
So what happens, sorry, and then what happens, I don't know if you're getting to that. What if it's a single person who has no immediate family or has
So
no,
I'm going to break it
Yeah.
down. So the
Yeah,
next
please.
the next thing would be, so if you have no spouse, no children, it goes to your parents. If you have
If
no
your parents are deceased.
I'm going there.
Mhm.
If you have no spouse, no children, no parents, it goes to brothers and sisters. If you have no spouse, no parents, or no spouse, no children, no parents, no brothers and sisters, it then goes to nieces and nephews. And if there are none of the above, it goes to next of kin, which they just keep moving the dial out this way to find a class of beneficiaries they can split your assets amongst.
And then what if and this takes time, I'm assuming too, to find all these people. If they, let's say there's a single person, they don't have any paperwork, any information, they put it out there. I've heard, I don't know if it's the same way now, they put it out to, let's say, a newspaper or some kind of news article where people can look in the newspaper to say, oh yeah, this person is deceased, next of kin, sort of thing. How do they still do that sort of thing, or how do they try and find people?
So it really is up to the personal representative to find those beneficiaries. So you're in that case, a lot of personal representatives are like private detectives because they're really looking for beneficiaries. And yeah, there are businesses that you can hire that will find beneficiaries. And yeah, there's sometimes where maybe they post an article in a newspaper or some other form of trying to find people. I would say that's not relatively the norm. Usually you can find beneficiaries of an estate, but sometimes it's not that easy. But it just speaks to the fact that we really need to ensure that we're taking care of these things and we're not procrastinating on getting things done. And that's exactly why I co-authored a book, and my chapter was called The Legacy Procrastination Effect.
That's excellent. Yeah, we talked a little bit briefly about that and why people procrastinate when it comes to writing wills or really even choosing an executor. So I'd love your your 2 cents on that.
So one question before we get into that. So Christine, so if there's, while you're waiting to figure out who's going to get what and how it all is going to happen, what happens to the property? Who's taking care of the mortgage and all of the upkeep if nobody's there, right? What happens to that?
So it's going to be that personal representative. So it's either going to be somebody that steps up that applies to the court to be the administrator of the estate, or it's going to devolve to the government, which is the public guardian and trustee.
Wow.
Okay. So they're going to be responsible for registering the property properly into the names of the beneficiaries. And there is some law out there that says that if they have not done that by the 3-year mark, the property will automatically vest in those beneficiaries without transfer of title, which says that, okay, so at 3 years plus 1 day, the owners of the property may not actually be the people who are on title.
Oh my goodness. Wow. People work very, very hard for the property. So please take care of it. You have to give a little bit of planning to see who is going to take care of your property. Who do you want it to go to, because sometimes the people that is next to kin, it's not the person that you want to leave your property to. So just make sure that that is taken care of, so your wills or wills will be applied, right?
I think what I always go back to here is that we all pay our insurance, our car insurance, our house insurance, without a second thought, because we have to have it, against perils that may or may not ever occur. But for something that is a certainty, such as death, we have a real reluctancy to go and get assistance to put proper documentation in place.
Right. And there's no, when people, so to go back to my question or to, talk about why people are hesitant about getting an executor or to even write a will. To me, honestly, as soon as I had my children, late 20s, early 30s, I said to my husband, let's go. We have to get this done immediately, because if we were both on a trip or, knock on wood, something would happen that both of us were incapacitated, we wanted to make sure our children were taken care of. So never mind our property, obviously, too, and to make sure the kids got it. But there is more to just a house or land. There is other property at stake too. And the care that, what Araceli was saying, for the children and for the properties too. So who takes care of all that stuff? So why do you think people are hesitant when they don't do a will? I know people in their 90s, they still don't have a will.
Yeah, it's skewed. I mean, the numbers are about 51%. And actually earlier on in life, it's skewed the other way. So a larger percentage of younger people do not have wills in place. Then as we kind of get to the middle stages, it's around the 51%. Then when you get to the other end of the spectrum, people who are, much older, a significantly higher percentage of them actually have wills in place. So it depends on what age range that you're really speaking of as to what the percentages really are. But when we look at it overall, it's about 51%. And I would say that, for my perspective, I think there are a couple of different things here. Number one is that we're all in 4 different stages of procrastination when it comes to planning. So one is you're in innocence. You haven't even thought about this yet because it's not on your radar. You're young. You think you're invincible. Maybe you don't have any assets. You think the cost of getting in front of a lawyer is too expensive. There's a number of reasons why people do not at that point do it.
Yeah.
And then the next stage is really what the stage that you got to, Colette, which is what I call acceptance. So you accept that certain things have happened in life. You've had children, you've bought assets, you're moving down a path where you think, oh, I need to do something. And you have one of two paths. You can either kick the can further down the road and say, yeah, it's not painful enough yet. I'll deal with it when it becomes really a pain point for me. Or you enter into the next state, which I call furtherance, where you get things in order.
Right.
You either, get wills and powers of attorney, maybe buy life insurance. There's a number of things you can do. But then what happens is that many of us end up boomeranging back and forth between acceptance and furtherance, because as you go further on in life, something happens. Ooh, okay, I accept that that happened. Now I'm going to go and change my documents, go back to furtherance, and then back and forth, back and forth. The stage that very few people ever achieve is the state of abundance, where you're planning for the future. And let's just say we have, I think, one of the major reasons that this is it's a sticking point for many people. We have a real inability to connect our present self with our future self for the purposes of planning. If you could have a conversation with your 85-year-old self, your 85-year-old self would probably say, look, what are you doing? Go and do this, this, and this. And by the way, stop smoking, stop drinking, like all these other things, right? But, I think that inability to connect yourself and realize that we are all aging. We don't, and again, everything is all about anti-aging, but come on, like, let's not do that to each other. Aging can be a good thing.
Of course. And you never know. So even if, bless you, if you make it to 85, so even I want to say when your kids are grown, you might go through a separation at some point. You might have a relative pass away and leave you money. there are all these things at different stages, and that's why Araceli
Yeah.
is a transitional specialist,
Yeah.
because she deals with all these things. So when you do have abundance, like let's say an inheritance, these are things that you really have to think of before you get ill or something happens to you. You know, you jump out of an airplane and your parachute doesn't open, God forbid. But that's the thing, like we all need to plan, and that's one thing that is an ongoing theme in this show is you need to plan out things before they happen. So that's why we think that Christine was so important to be on the show
Yeah,
today,
you
because
really hit a point here, Christine.
yes,
I have seen so many people, and I deal with people all the time, that they're just living in the present. We really are a society that is getting the immediate gratification. Everything is fast, right? With the internet, with the delivery, I order something, it comes to me tomorrow. So they don't think that you're aging, and you're aging every day. I feel 25, but it's like that was 25 years ago. So what happened to those 25 years? Really
And the
fast.
problem with all of that, Araceli, is this. So yes, we're aging. Our bodies are aging, but our brains are also aging.
Mhm.
And it's an unfortunate reality, but dementias, Alzheimer's, all of those uh, ailments that can hit us when we're older are coming into scope more and more because we're living longer. So medical advance has come a long way, and we're being kept alive longer and longer, but it hasn't quite kept pace with capacity. So planning with abundance, I think planning with abundance is like, let's not just call it like, monetary abundance. It's about preparing people for the future,
Yeah.
yeah, I
preparing your
really like that.
beneficiaries,
Yeah,
preparing your executors for the future. And a will and a power of attorney for property and a power of attorney for personal care is not enough,
right. So
right?
what's the process with you? So if I say, Christine, help me figure this all out, what's your process when you meet a client the first, like, do you go through some kind of, question and answer period or how does it work?
Yeah, I like to start not from a perspective of technical planning. I like to start from the practical side of planning, which is let's talk about how you really want to be remembered,
Excellent.
right?
Yeah.
What's your legacy mission statement? I mean, I have several. I have one personal mission statement. I have one for each of the businesses that I have as well. And I have the benefit of that is that I actually think I'm aging more healthily because I have a purpose every day. I wake up with that purpose. And at the end of the day, I take stock to make sure that I've actually achieved it. And
I
it
love
feels
that.
good when you achieve your goals.
Yeah,
That's
that is
excellent.
amazing. But you see, one of the things that I've noticed with the majority of people, at least within my business, when they're doing financial planning, they're not very aware or how far they need to go, right? And I totally agree with you. The people that are the wealthiest are the ones that have the ability to see farther into the future. And this is exactly what you're talking about. Looking at your 85, 90-year-old, now maybe 100. We might be able to live that long, right? That how am I going to be health wise, money wise, relationship wise? All of that thing really has a toll in you what you do today, because it's going to be a reflection in whatever future, however far you want to go. So that is what I always tell people. How do you want to be? How do you want to retire? How do you see yourself doing that? And most people really cannot tell me, oh, well, I never thought about it. I thought it would be this far away, right? And it is
Right.
never that far away.
So have you, I'm not sure if you ever do something like this, but maybe in our age demographic, I already have my will. I already, I only have two kids. They're going to get everything. That's pretty much it. But when it comes to really like what you were talking about, maybe I have to go back and revisit to say, okay, how do I really want to live? What's my legacy? That sort of thing. So would you ever consider doing like a workshop or a course so other people that they're not sure? So what the question before was, why are people hesitant? And for me, same thing in my business too. I think people are hesitant because they don't know what's out there. They don't know what's possible. They don't know their choices. And if somebody, if let's say I come to you and say, okay, what are my choices, to go through all of the different things that I could do technically now and in the future. So do you do anything like that, to do a workshop or something that people just want to sort of feel things out first?
Yeah, interesting. You should ask that question, because that was the genesis of Legacy U. So we ran a 5-day summit in the end of 2020 last year, where we brought in a whole bunch of specialists. So we talked, day one was all about living your legacy.
Amazing.
Right? Because you have to, like, if you really want to leave something intentional, you have to set a goal to reach that, and then just reverse engineer it to make sure that you achieve that. Otherwise, it's leaving something unintentional. And I can tell you, I've left my wallet behind at home and it didn't have a very good consequence.
Yes, of course, of course. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I hope you have one next year too. And
well, I'll tell you. So what we are doing is I'm just in the midst of finishing it off. So Legacy U is all about education, because I find that that is the piece that's missing.
Absolutely.
So we will be running a series of workshops. And workshop number 1 is really a legacy mission statement creation lab. And it gets you to go and ask 2 to 3 people how they're going to remember you. And if you're not hearing what you want to hear, you have the opportunity to change that.
Wow, that's great. I really like that.
Right?
Araceli, we'll talk after, okay?
Oh yeah, that is very interesting. I think that this is very, it's a continuation of having a plan, like, how do you want to live today? And what I usually encourage my clients is to just not look at today. Today is very important, of course, right? But you also have to take a look at what steps you need to take in order to make that happening, at least from the financial point of view. But at the same time, how do you want to be remembered? That should be part of it. So that kind of comes hand in hand to what I do, right? So very interesting.
What I can also tell you is that if you want the people that are left behind to clean up everything for you, if you want them not to remember you for, oh my goodness, I wish I could take you, I could bring you back just so I could kill you myself because you left me a mess.
It's not easy to be an executor.
I don't think that people understand how much work goes into taking care of a estate. I tell you that because my partner lost his dad a couple years ago. And when we had to take him to a home, it was a big to do because he had no paperwork. We had to redo everything. And we barely kind of did it because he was very fragile. It was very hard for us to take him to the bank to do some transactions. So please take care of it when you are strong, when you're healthy, because when you are in bed, at that point in time, that makes it very, very difficult for the people that are around you.
But I think what Colette said is correct, because there's no practical guidance. There's nobody to hold your hand through this process to say, okay, so yes, a will and powers of attorney are not enough. Oh, well, what else is there? I don't know what else there is. Somebody has not, nobody came in and taught me that. So how do I ascertain exactly what else I need to do? Yeah. And that's the genesis of the workshops as well, is to say, listen, come along, I'll hold your hand and I'll show you what the other things are that you really should do. Because let's face it, an executor of the future is not the same as an executor of the past, where everything, there was mail coming to the house before.
Oh yeah.
There's no mail coming anymore. Everything's behind locked screens, and leaving passwords is not an option.
Right. That's what I was going to say about your email that you sent us, where you say, just, printing out your passwords on a little piece of paper and leaving it somewhere in the house is not enough. Like so I just thought of something too. So when I had my first child, we did the Lamaze classes and the birthing classes, and we came up with a birthing plan that I didn't want to have drugs. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. So it's very much the same thing about having an executor, having a will, and then to know, okay, do I want gas or I don't want to have what do you call that when you have the
epidural?
Epidural. Thank you. You can tell I haven't had babies in a long time, but it's the same kind of thing when you have, like, and Araceli said that too, like, you've worked so hard your whole life to have this estate and to go into the right hands. How many times have I heard, oh, this, my dad didn't want my cousin to have it or my brother to have it, and this was supposed to be meant for me. And even stories about my parents too, about I wanted to leave this piece of jewelry to somebody, and it wasn't left to the right person. So all these small things, don't think just because your estate means real estate. It's not. It's much bigger. It's everything included.
And thinking about that real estate, it's creating. So what I bring people through when I'm planning on the practical side is creating a blueprint. Because let's face it, most of our executors and powers of attorney are not private investigators.
Yeah,
Thank
and they have
God.
lives as well,
Right?
right? So,
But you're forcing them to be that if you're not providing a proper blueprint. So what do you really need to provide? I've created an organizer. So the organizer for personal is about 83 pages long. Don't let that scare you.
Wow.
It includes everything, even if you're leaving behind, genetic material like sperm, ova, gamete, cord blood, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Okay. And the digital asset organizer is about 25 pages because there's a lot that goes into digital assets. You've got, a lot of people probably have businesses now, and we're looking at going forward. I heard stats saying that every child in the future is probably going to have a web domain and a website, right?
Yep.
So what happens? Is that personally held? Is that held in a business? If it's being held in a business, have you transferred the web domain from your own personal name where you bought it off the site into the name of the business?
Right.
And then how do you provide all the information for somebody to be able to find that information? If it's properties that you're holding. So who are you paying all the bills to? Who are the utility companies? Are they coming direct out of an account? Do they come off a credit card statement? Because if you're an executor in that kind of an estate, or even at that power of attorney, just think you're going to have to order back a year's worth of credit card statements and a year's worth of bank statements in order to try and go line by line and figure it all out. And then then there's information you're not going to find, because let's face it, we're living digitally, even more so post-pandemic, because we were forced to get there. Terms and conditions on all those apps that we accept on our phone. Okay, so the stats are 91% of us do not read those.
no.
I think it's even higher than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes. So 91% of people were willing to admit they don't read them.
Right.
but I think it's going to get
And the
very
consequence of that is we accept all these apps on our phone, and a lot of them we don't ever pay for, but they have a plethora of information contained within them. So you've really got to do your job about, working your way through this. And it's not a one-day process. It's a work in progress, but with the right tools, you can actually work your way through it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I really love that Legacy University workshop kind of thing. Can you quickly say how people can reach you, and just leave your website even, and then how people can get in touch with you? Because that would be fantastic. Yeah. And then we can have it on writing as well.
Yeah, I do have all her information will be posted in the YouTube video.
Tell us anyway.
But if you do have however, we want you to keep us in mind when you have the next workshop, because then we can bring you back so you can invite people and you can give us the dates. Definitely is something that I want to bring to my clients, because it's something that really complements to what I'm doing with them. And I think it's for everybody to think this through. Remember, if you want to accumulate more wealth, or you are in that stage of accumulating wealth, that is the best time to think about how this is going to pass on to who do you want it to have, and how do you want to impact in the future for what you're doing. So that is fantastic.
Do you have a date already set for 2022?
I do not have the date set. I'm looking at probably spring.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, let us know.
Yeah. So what's your, how can people reach you? Just,
Yeah, so really quickly, it's Christine@trustedlegacy.ca is how you can best reach me. You can call me on the phone. My website is www.trustedlegacy.ca. All my details are there. There's a lot of information about me on the internet, right?
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
And we will be, so when we run these, we'll also be giving copies of the book. So we'll give a copy of the digital book and a bunch of information. So it's going to be probably a 4 workshop series
Wow.
with an additional 2 optional ones, because, we can all talk about our tax number on death.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that people do not realize, that in Canada, we do pay a substantial amount of tax on death, especially if you hold real estate properties that are investment properties, because
Yes.
they're not principal residents. They're not, we can't use them with the principal residence exemption.
Yeah.
And so you're going to pay potentially a substantial amount of tax. And the conversation around that, when most people say, hey, are you planning on leaving any money to charity? That's, to me, not a philanthropic conversation. It should be something more around the lines of, this is your number. This is the bag of money your executor picks up and drops off on the doorstep of the government.
Yeah.
I just want to know if you're okay with it, or
No,
would you
I'm not
rather,
okay with it.
Yeah.
would you rather deploy some or all of that?
Yeah,
to charity?
I'd rather give it to family
For
members.
sure. I
Yeah.
think that
Well, and
most
you can't,
people-
right? So the thing is, you're going to pay tax. You either pay tax or you give it to some sort of charitable type of venture where you're getting a tax deduction for that, right?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, and there is
So
a lot
it's about redirecting.
Yeah, lots of things to do. Like we don't want you to avoid taxes. No, that's not the thing. But if you can change the direction of those funds to go to something that is meaningful to you, that is going to make an impact, or something that you believe in, I think that's a better use of that money. The government collects tons of money throughout the day. Remember, debt and taxes are always a certainty. So try to plan for that so you can pay the least amount of money to the government, and then the rest of it can go to something that you believe in, or to somebody that you care about.
Well, again, it's about options, like knowing.
Absolutely. The more you plan, the
have
better off you're going to be in your finances, your health, your will, everything. So planning is one of the things that we talk about so much in the show, right? Because it's part of life, and a plan is nothing that is exactly what is going to happen, but it gives you a path to follow. And if something doesn't happen exactly, then you can correct and say, okay, I'm going to do this instead because this didn't happen, and continue to do that. It's just a map for you to
What I
get.
find amazing is that so many people are reluctant to have this conversation.
Yes.
See, this is the
However,
thing. Yeah.
when the conversation is done and the plan is done, there's a physical sense of like, I see people do this,
Relief.
like wow, okay, I thought that was going to go differently than it did, but it actually wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. And I have this sense of relief that, oh my gosh, you know what? If something happens to me today, tomorrow, everything's covered. Like, it's
Right.
a sense of relief that most people just don't realize until it's been lifted.
Exactly.
I was just
And
gonna
you know
say
what?
the same.
You mentioned something very, very interesting, because I have the same sense when I start working with clients, when their finances, right? And in some cases, I have been speaking to them and says, listen, let's get together. Let's get together. I have a client that for 2 years, I said, nudging her, let's get together. Finally, she got together with me, and she said, well, I didn't want to talk to you because, I thought that this was not going to go anywhere. I talked to other advisors, they didn't help me. But after we got everything completed, she said, this wasn't as bad, and I feel really good about doing this, that I just tackle it and it's done, right? So
I'm so passionate about this that I say to people, listen, if you're really that reluctant to like get stuff like this done, then tell me what it is give me an activity that you enjoy. So this happened recently. And so this person said to me, well, I like wine on Friday nights. I said, great. Then for the next however many Fridays in a row, bring your glass of wine. We're going to hop on a Zoom and I'm going to walk you through this process.
good idea.
I
Very
really like
good
that.
idea.
I like wine too. Let's do that. Maybe that's what it should be. It should be like a Friday night chit chat, fireside. See, I have my fire beside me. Fireside chit chat. That it's to have people worry about it and to have people nervous about the process. It's all because of the unknown. So
I
whenever
think
somebody
it's
is
more of
hesitant,
the expectation, and kind of like it's like taboo. Oh my God, I don't want to talk about
Exactly.
debt, or I don't want to talk about finances. But I think that the more people embrace it, the farther you get through it, people get relief and it says, oh my God, I took care of it. It's done, right?
I think
And
it's also
you move
cultural.
forward.
I think a lot of people feel that talking, just like you said, it's taboo to talk about death or to talk about disability, things like that, or things that are going to happen in the future when you're jinxing yourself or whatever way you want to call it. So honestly, I think that might be a little old-fashioned thinking when it comes to
There's
that.
actually empirical evidence that says that that is completely bogus.
Okay, thank you. Yes, of course. But that's the thing. Older generations, I think, have that sort of stigma in their heads. So really, I don't know if that's going to continue with younger generations, but it's also because we are in the information age and there's so much out there. But please get your information from the
That's
right source,
definitely
like
why we do
Christine.
this, right? That's
Yeah.
what we do this because people don't know what they don't know, right? And we don't know it. It's out of mind, out of sight, or out of sight, out of mind, right? And you don't pay attention to it. And now that we have this ability to be in front of people, you can give that information and just bring that awareness to people that just take care of it. It's not as painful as you think it is. And the sooner you do it, and for people that are not doing or taking care of finances, the sooner you take care of it, the sooner you start the habit, that habit is going to stay for life. Money is just a way that we exchange things. And when you look at it, you're touching money one way or another, maybe not physically, but everything is online. You're paying bills, you're paying for your mortgage, you're buying that coffee or lunch, right? So everything touches money. That's one of the things that I always say. So take care of it because I believe that the universe will reward you if you do take care of what you have. So don't wait until you become a millionaire to take care of your finances. It's the opposite. Take care of your finances to become a millionaire. That's what I say.
So any last remarks, Christine?
Fantastic information.
No, this has been fantastic chatting with both of you, and I wish you a merry everything.
Thank you. You
Hope you have
too.
an awesome holiday.
Yeah.
And if, like I say, if there's people out there that are, thirsting for knowledge, don't leave it to Google, because that which you do not know, you'll never find on Google. But seek out people like yourselves and get connected. And I'm happy to, if we can somehow set up a joint workshop, that would be amazing. The more people that we can get off of the train of not just burying their head in the sand and not knowing and not understanding that, hey, there's a better way,
Right.
the better off we all are. And if we could start a generation that actually doesn't shroud plans in secrecy, that values openness, communication, organization, recording, wow, can imagine what the future would be.
Oh yeah, no,
Absolutely. That's so fantastic. Thank you. You
great.
couldn't say it any better. Thank you so much. This is exactly what we do here on the show, getting people the information that they need. And you are completely right. Google has a lot of information, but it could be now it's going the opposite direction. Before we didn't have enough information. Now it's so much information, and it could be skewed, right? Because people have their opinions. Then there is descriptions, and there's many ways to define something that people actually end up very confused because now they don't know what they have to do. So the best thing to do is always get a personalized consultant that could help you with your particular situation. So we really thank you so much, and we're looking forward to do some collaboration next year, Christine.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that with both of you.
Thank you for
Amazing.
joining us. This is great. I'm really nervous now, not in a bad way. Like I'm nervous that I want to get started. So I have a will, I have what I think is done, but I like options and I want to know more. So I'm really excited to look forward to your workshop. And thank you so much for joining us. Thanks everybody for joining us today too.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Araceli.
Have a happy, merry Christmas, and we will see you
And all the best in 2022.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Bye,
Christine.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.